Good morning. Now, can we do a little better than that? Come on. I could be behind my desk signing checks or something. I've come up here to speak to you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to Idaho and the mountains and Sun Valley. Are we doing all right?
Absolutely.
Good, good. Well, I was talking to Dave a while back about our company, and he was explaining what your group does here. And suddenly it hit me that there's an amazing similarity between what the Holding family, and specifically Earl and Carol Holding, the patriarchs of our organization, did over the course of their lives to create an incredible group of businesses that I'd like to tell you a little bit about. Starts with their story. Two individuals of pretty humble means, a couple that meets while going to school at the University of Utah. He's studying civil engineering. They get married. They start a little orchard. He goes to work for the Bureau of Reclamation, civil engineer, so water projects and that sort of thing. Yet today, we're here in this beautiful resort that they built. Dave was talking about, think about points of inflection, transformative moments in people's lives that changed their career. I think about Earl and Carol Holding. Had they stayed on the path of a married couple where the husband is a civil engineer for the Bureau of Reclamation, I wonder where I'd be today. I wonder where this resort would be. Instead, he had an opportunity to go out to the middle of the desert in Wyoming. This is before the interstates, and take over a little failing gas station, motel, cafe, a place called Little America, Wyoming, somewhere between Salt Lake and Cheyenne, out there, middle of nowhere. And from that, from just taking a failing business and applying just these very, very fundamental principles: hard work, honesty, value, treating your employees correctly, from one little gas station in the middle of sagebrush, nowhere, Cheyenne or somewhere in Wyoming, this incredible, incredible empire, which I'll tell you a little bit more about here in a moment. But this incredible empire grew. One hotel where suddenly it gets a reputation for high quality, and it starts doing well. And suddenly they're supplying diesel to all the truckers going along the highways out there. And then there's another hotel, and then down the road a few years, this all starts in 52, but down the road a few years, requires a refinery. If you're in the gas station business, why not a refinery? But slowly building and building to where by the mid-70s, he owns not only a large string of hotels, the Little America chain, the Westgate Hotel in San Diego, but an oil company by the name of Sinclair Oil, and is able to acquire that by just slowly building over time. At about the same time, he notices that, it was just a small article in the Wall Street Journal, I think it was in the spring of '77, that Disney Corporation is looking at a little resort in Idaho called Sun Valley, that Disney had always wanted to own a resort, a ski resort, and this one was for sale. Mr. Holding makes a call, and very quickly we wind up owning Sun Valley. And that's, I think, what I really want to talk to you a little bit about, is the railroad had built this wonderful, wonderful resort in 1936. And it filled one role for many, many years in the early days, but as the railroads waned over time in the country, Sun Valley, you could say its glory days were behind it. Again, with the holdings and this kind of long-term focus on building an asset over decades and decades, suddenly they come in and the hotels that had been built in 36 and really hadn't had a great deal of attention since then, suddenly they're starting to get refreshed. And the ski lifts that were here on the mountain, again, built in 1936, 1937. You see all the little pictures. They're great, nostalgic sorts of things, but kind of little old single chairlifts that went up the mountain. Suddenly, Mr. Holding's vision of just taking this place and investing and making it fresh, making it quality, over the years, that sort of just constant focus on quality, on doing the right thing, just made a tremendous difference here. And I will tell you, I started here right out of grad school, the winter of 75, 76. I know I look much younger than that, but in fact, started here then, and when the Holdings bought the place, here's a very private, conservative family that really does believe in the value of work. And this was one of those fun mountain towns that you may have heard of back in the 60s and 70s. I think they made some movies about places like this. And the two cultures clashed a fair amount. Nobody was happy to see a conservative businessman from Salt Lake City buy Sun Valley. There were even cars running around town with bumper stickers that Earl is a four-letter word. And that was kind of the atmosphere in this valley in the late 70s as you went through the normal change of any business that had been owned by one organization for a long time, changing to another. Fast forward 30, 40 years, that family has been here, and wherever you look on this property, and the property extends from, I think most of you were up at the Roundhouse last night, the property extends from Bald Mountain to Dollar Mountain to 45 holes of golf in Elkhorn and Trail Creek and the White Clouds and a world-class symphony pavilion here in the valley. All of these beautiful facilities that simply were built over time, almost regardless of the winds of the economy. And over time, people saw what was done here, and in 2006 or so, I wasn't here at that time, but in 2006 or so, that sense of Earl being a four-letter word had morphed all the way to this massive outpouring of the community where the whole valley turned out to honor the family and the man that had done so much for this valley over time. Instead of the four-letter word, it was now Earl and Carol Holding are the best things that ever happened to Sun Valley. And that piece, I think about what they did here and that slow, steady investment in the product, in the people over time is one thing. But what their, I'm not sure they used the word evergreen, but what their business philosophy allowed them to do, and maybe the most important imprint it made on the valley here, was what they didn't do. And that's the thing we hear more than anything from the folks that come here, the folks that stay with us, is that it is so different here. It's friendly, it's relaxed, it's not crowded. People come here and they say, what is it about this place? And it's funny, it's almost that dichotomy of what has been built. It's beautiful. I mean, for God's sake, we're in a children's ski room here. I've been in the ski business all my life. I've not seen many children's ski rooms that are quite like this. They've done everything in that fashion, but more importantly, there's a lot of things they simply haven't done that they could have done. We have thousands and thousands of acres of what I guess most resort developers would call prime developable land. The areas last night that you passed through going up the mountain at River Run, all those big flat areas at the bottom, we all own those. At most other mountain resorts in this day and age, what do you think those would be? Begins with a C. Condos, kind of garden variety, mountain shopping malls with all of the brands that you're familiar with. You won't see that there, and I don't think you'll see that anytime soon. We have exactly the same thing at the bottom of Warm Springs, the other side of the mountain. We have exactly the same thing here. All, vast acreages of land that sit right at the base of ski hills. The large horse pasture between Ketchum and Haley, it's horse pasture. And my guess, it will primarily remain horse pasture for years. Again, just and maybe I should fess up a little bit about my own background. I worked here for many years as a mountain manager on the ski hill. Had an opportunity to go down to Tahoe. I'm from Northern California and return to my roots, and ran a resort at Tahoe called North Star Tahoe for 17, 18 years. And in that time, and that was a publicly traded company owned by Fiberboard Corporation, a wood products company, publicly traded, and then we were owned by a private equity firm, primarily financed with junk bonds, and then ultimately a REIT, a real estate investment trust that owned the resort. Under all three of those models, we're operating a business very similar to this one, but under a very, very different set of assumptions. You've got share price to keep up, you've got interest payments to make, you've got a lease payment to make. Regardless of what it is, that imperative of quarterly and yearly earnings, when I see the change we made there, and I'm very proud of what we did, but we took, again, a vast private tract of land in the mountains, and it now has a Ritz-Carlton on it, it now has a Hyatt Vacation Club, it's got ski lifts everywhere, it's got beautiful private golf developments at the base. I think it's a wonderful resort, but the acceleration and the intensity of development is quite different and creates a different aura. Here, that primary impact of, I guess you'd call the evergreen effect here, I think you feel around the whole property. If you walk through the village, we have people stop and go, I didn't know there were places like this left. If you walk from the lodge to the inn with the swan ponds and the carillon ringing from the opera house, you sometimes start looking around going, I wonder if there's people in white coats around here waiting to take me away. It is, I think, kind of almost a throwback to a different era, and it seems to be what our guests like more than anything. Just that sense that there is still a place that you can relax in, that's not cluttered. So we're very, very happy with that. I'll just tell you a little bit about where we're headed, and I wish I could speak definitively about that. Our patriarch passed away a couple of years ago, Mr. Holding. Mrs. Holding continues the legacy. We just finished, as Dave was saying, an incredible remake of a 180,000 square foot facility, a 1936 historic lodge. Gilbert Stanley Underwood, the great national park architect that did the Ahwahnee in Yosemite and the Grand Canyon Lodge. So it was no minor feat, but totally rebuilt that building in a year under her direction. And it's just amazing that the desire to keep the legacy alive, to keep what makes this property so special, The easy thing for us, we needed new guest rooms, we needed updated guest rooms. The easy thing would have been forget the old lodge, move right next to it, build an annex, put 100 rooms there of the type and quality that people expect today. The hard thing was to go at that building. It's a concrete building. If you look at it from the outside, it appears to be wooden. It's board form, cast in place concrete. So to do anything to it, you better have a really big jackhammer and a really big concrete saw. And in 1 year, totally rebuilt it under her supervision, such that everything, every picture on the wall, every piece of granite or marble, really, she had a large part in making sure all of it was very, very special. That sort of stewardship of, I think, what is perceived as an asset that's much bigger than us, it's perhaps an asset of national significance, perhaps even more, that we are stewarding, that the family is stewarding for the long term, but always with this sense of respect for it, as opposed to this is the engine that drives our profitability. In fact, it is, but it's always approached with a little bit more reverence. And that piece has been the same since the day the Holdings owned the property. Mr. Holdings' favorite saying, anything worth doing is worth overdoing. And if you wander around our properties, whether it's the base lodges at the bottom of the mountain, whether it's the lodge, again, the Sun Valley Symphony Pavilion, this building, which is really nothing more than a beginner ski hill children's ski school facility, everything has been approached with that philosophy that it's far, far more important than what you're doing at the moment, that it ripples forward for generations and generations. So back to my point, the Holding family, Sun Valley, and the future, wish I knew. I can only speculate, and I would speculate that the next generation, the children, share that same philosophy as their parents, that they learned well from their parents the value of this long-term approach, the value of seeing things in a much larger context than today. So I'm incredibly excited that this place will remain what it has been for years. And that is, when I try to explain Sun Valley to people that have never been here, what seems to resonate most with people is the simple saying that Sun Valley is the kind of place where people live and visit that could live or visit anywhere in the world. And that was true years ago, still true today, and my guess is that's the way the resort will carry forward for years to come. So it's been an honor to welcome you. I hope you have a great visit. And let's hope it cools off just a little bit here. Us mountain folks aren't used to this warm weather. So please have a great stay with us, okay? Thank you for your attention.